guys, welcome back to my channel, and if you are new here, just a plain welcome then. Today we're going to be talking about Tinkerbell and how the fairies are able to cross seasons. In the first movie, Bubble and Clank take Tinkerbell on a tour through Pixie Hollow. On this tour, they actually cross the border into the winter woods and watch the winter fairies return home from the mainland. The problem with this, however, is that in the fourth movie, Secret of the Wings, it is expressed how dangerous it is for fairies to be crossing over into the opposite season. The opposite seasons being the winter season and the three other seasons of the warm seasons, and the fairies associated with both of those there. So, how are they crossing between the seasons if it's so dangerous for them? The easy explanation for this is simply that the movie writers didn't think about it when writing it. However, that's no fun. Upon watching it back, I realised that they don't spend a lot of time in the winter woods and they're basically right on the border. It's quite possible that they haven't even really crossed over into the winter woods and are just simply right on that border where they can feel it on their wings, but it's not enough to cause damage. The other side of it is that they're not there for very long and they're very quickly flying out of it. We see the same happen with Tinkerbell at the beginning of Secret of the Wings, where she crosses the border into the winter woods and is there for a little bit longer than what she would have been with Bubble and Clank at the beginning of the first movie, before Fawn drags her out. She's not in there long enough to really cause damage, but there is some things that she needs to do to sort of just monitor it and make sure that she is okay. Once I saw this, I realized that that's it. That's the answer. Those are the only real two examples we have of warm fairies entering winter, and that's pretty much the explanation for it without having broken wings, was that they just simply weren't there long enough. But again, that's no fun. What it also doesn't explain is the reverse, winter fairies being out of the winter woods. We have two clear-cut examples of this. We have the Minister of Winter, again, only visible in the first movie before she's taken over by Lord Mallory. However, still an example all the same, as in the first movie, she is meeting with the other leaders at the pixie dust tree in the warm seasons without any issues. The second example of which is the winter fairies at Tinkerbell's arrival ceremony. You can see their talent bubble being present in the ceremony and as an option for Tinkerbell to take, but they don't have any issues being in the warm seasons. Side note, I have no idea why the pixie dust tree just isn't a safe hollow for everyone with the 4 seasons meeting at each side of the tree, but that's just not what they decided to do. Starting with the Minister of Winter, I think there can be a couple of things that can explain this. Being a minister does mean that she is in leadership, meaning she has to meet with the other fairies in leadership to go about their business in getting the seasons ready for the mainland. Because of this, it wouldn't be too far-fetched for her wings to have adapted to be able to stand the warmer seasons, since there are 3 of them and 1 of her. This would make sense that her wings adapt, as we've seen it before. In the books, the minor talent fairies, they have smaller wings because they are working underground and they need their wings less than what other fairies do that are working up top. So it's not that far-fetched for a minister's wings to do the same, to adapt to the surroundings that they need to be in. In regards to her disappearance, however, there are some things that can explain that as well. When you look at the mainland, you have the northern and southern hemispheres. Why there aren't 2 seasons operating at one time from Pixie Hollow, I don't know, but at the same time, the song does state the second star to the right, and that is how they go on to the mainland, and in reverse to come back to Neverland in Peter Pan. These are referring to the northern stars, which is only visible in the northern hemisphere. So it would go to say that the southern hemisphere probably is dealt with another Pixie Hollow-esque like place, and that the Pixie Hollow we see in the Tinkerbell films is only dealing with the upper half. In the top section of the northern hemisphere, you have the Arctic Circle, which is pretty much an eternal winter. With this in mind, it doesn't seem too outrageous to have winter fairies working around the clock to keep that area going. As such, the Minister of Winter is probably required on the mainland a little bit more to help them out with the day-to-day dealings of continual ice and snow. With her absence, however, it's quite possible she's delegated to Lord Mallory to step up in her place to prepare the winter fairies for the rest of the year for the winter season on the mainland. Him being a stand-in minister probably doesn't mean that his wings have adapted, especially since his wing broke when he was much younger, when the love affair between Queen Clarion and him had started. These were the early days of Pixie Hollow, so therefore he probably wasn't set up to be the minister, the acting minister at least, at that point in time, and a broken wing does very much so prevent someone from flying to the leadership meetings. So that's one side explained. But what about the winter fairies at the arrival? If you ever do research on the amount of talents that there are in the Tinkerbell films and the books, there is an abundance of talents. You have art, animal, garden, water, light, tinker, helper, kitchen, fire, mining, and it just goes on. There is just so many of them. Within all of these talents, you also have sub-talents, and there is an abundance more of them. They can be anything from a fairy specifically punching the holes out in cheese to create Swiss cheese, to someone who is interested in pots and pans like Tinkerbell. There are an abundance of them, and they just keep going. Wouldn't be too surprising to have some unknown sub-talents as well. The reason that I made sure to specifically mention helper talents is because they are the talents that help the leadership team, but they also help in other various ways. You have the wing washer, since the wings can't necessarily be washed in a traditional way. You have talents that are specifically designed to wash the wings effectively to keep up their hygiene. You also have the bath drawer, you have the celebration setup team, you have such a variety of them that it wouldn't be too surprising to have one that is made for the winter seasons, to have a helper talent and a winter talent combined, to have a winter helper welcoming fairy. Wouldn't be too far-fetched. That's what's likely to be who these girls are. They are probably the fairies that are created to help welcome the new fairies to the winter woods. They are there to present their talent token, and if it should be chosen, they then escort the fairy back to the winter woods. Again, with wing adaptation, their wings are probably adapted to deal with the warmer seasons that little bit longer than what a regular winter fairy would be. This would mean that they can attend the arrival ceremony and still have time to take the winter fairy back before any potential damage to their wings is caused. The winter fairy that arrives at the pixie dust tree probably hasn't had enough time for her wings, his or her wings, to adapt to the warm seasons, and as such can still adapt to the winter seasons then. But what does this mean for Periwinkle? Well, I honestly think that her landing in the winter woods for her arrival was honestly an accident. I think that Periwinkle is an abnormality. When you look at the pixie dust tree in the winter woods, it's actually just a root. And considering there were winter fairies at Tinkerbell's arrival, it's likely that they heard that there was an arrival and the welcoming winter fairies went off to the pixie dust tree in anticipation of a new arrival. Tinkerbell has arrived and obviously has become a Tinker talent, and the winter fairies from there have just left and gone back home. Periwinkle, on the other hand, has accidentally landed in the winter woods and has hence had her arrival ceremony there, and having started there has probably just assumed the role of a winter fairy. With this in mind, do you think that if Periwinkle had actually gone to the pixie dust tree like he was meant to, if he would have still been the same talent? When you look at their arrivals side by side, which The Secret of the Wings does show us, they look identical. Their hair, their faces, their wings are identical. I wouldn't be too surprised that if Periwinkle had actually arrived at the pixie dust tree with Tinkerbell, that their talents would either be the same or would coincide with each other very well. But at the same time, talents are innate, and considering that Periwinkle does go on to be a frost talent, probably isn't something that he could help. It was probably something that he was already born with, so no matter where he ended up, he was going to be in the winter woods separated from Tinkerbell anyway. But if they had known about each other from the beginning, it's likely we wouldn't have had the events of Secret of the Wings to begin with. But who knows? Let me know what you think down below, whether you think Periwinkle would still have the same talent if he arrived at the pixie dust tree like he should have. Please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe down below as well if you would like to see more content. But aside from that, I will see you guys next time. Bye!